welcome to an American Diabetes Month Hits Different chat. Today I will be speaking with Libby, a woman who's been living with type 1 diabetes for over 80 years, and we're going to hear a little bit about her life and type 1 diabetes and how things have kind of changed over her life. And so welcome, Libby, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So I would love to hear a little bit of background on you, like where you were born and raised and things like that.
If you ask the questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay, she wants to know where you were born and where you were raised.
I was born inside Johannesburg, South Africa, and in 1930, which makes me 91 years, 91 years old now.
No, you're 92.
92. Oh, I'm forgetting the time. I was born in a city equivalent probably to Manhattan, but not nearly as big. And I was raised there.
Oh, that's wonderful. And when were you diagnosed with type 1 diabetes?
I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1941. I was 11 years old. I had been on holiday in a small country place, and I developed a severe infection. Now, whether that's related or not, I don't know, but a few weeks later, I developed the symptoms of diabetes: severe hunger, absolutely gross thirst, and very quick, massive weight loss. My mother begged me to see a doctor. She was petrified at my weight loss. She put me onto cod liver oil, which I think is probably the worst thing to have done. And when I did not improve, she called in our primary care doctor to the house. He, even on the history of thirst, hunger, weight loss, mainly the thirst, even before testing the blood, I don't think he even tested blood then, it was the urine, he diagnosed diabetes, which later was confirmed on a blood test. I was admitted to hospital, a children's hospital, in a semi-comatose condition.
Oh, no.
And in those days, we didn't have ICU beds or wards. I was put into a semi-private little ward just opposite the sisters' room so that they could keep an eye on me. I was put onto an insulin and a drip immediately.
Mm-hmm.
They kept me in hospital. In those days, they didn't believe in exercise. In fact, that was almost forbidden. They put me into hospital on strict bed rest. I was there for 6 weeks to get under control.
Wow.
The bed rest, I can't remember, but I think it was roughly for 3 or 4 weeks. I wasn't allowed to get out of bed. And they adjusted the insulin. The insulin was given with a glass syringe.
Mm-hmm.
And a very long, what I remember, a long, thick needle.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't teach me how to give the injections. I suppose they did, but we only used the arm. We didn't use the abdomen or the thigh.
Mm-hmm.
In later life, one learned that one could take the insulin in different parts of the body: arms, buttocks, abdomen, thighs. I don't remember if I was ultimately discharged on 1 or 2 injections a day. They mixed the regular insulin together with a long-acting insulin. It was called protein and zinc insulin.
Mm-hmm.
After discharge, I remember going home sort of unaware. I was given a 3 to 5 year life sentence. They told me that I would die within diabetics didn't live longer than 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
The only type 1 diabetic that I ever met in those days was a girl who was in hospital.
Mm-hmm.
She had been admitted a few times. What happened to her, I've no idea. But as I say, I lived with, instead of living for 3 to 5 years, I've lived now for 81 years.
Okay, I'll call you back.
Sorry, there's another call.
Okay, go ahead.
Then when I came home, what really sort of upset me was I was put onto severe, without really upset me, I was just sent home and it was absolutely explicitly explained that I had to be on diet. Now, I was very lucky that I followed those instructions. When I was told that I had to be on strict food instructions,
Mm-hmm.
insulin, and the food had to be eaten. Now, this is when I was at school. The food had to be eaten at 12 midday. Now, at 12 midday, we were in the middle of class. My mother used to send the maid with a tray of the full diet. It was actually measured, the amount of protein, the amount of carbohydrate, the amount of fat. And the teacher put my chair outside the classroom because I wasn't allowed to eat in the classroom. And it was actually quite almost humiliating sitting outside the classroom on a chair with my tray of food and eating it.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition, missing the lesson.
Right.
When it came to sport, I wasn't allowed to play sport because they reckon exercise was very bad for a diabetic. So what I did not to feel out of things, I would go and play tennis, but I wouldn't move. I remember standing in the back line trying to hit a ball, which I never succeeded. And at high school, again, I wasn't allowed to play sport.
Mm-hmm.
I was now in what you'd call grade 8. I wasn't allowed to play sport. So what I did was I secretly walked around the hockey field to see how much exercise that was.
Yeah.
Then I decided not to be different to anyone else. I played netball goalie, where you don't have to run, all you do is catch a ball,
Mm-hmm.
which I often missed. And so that has obviously changed. Nowadays, one is encouraged to have exercise, not to sit around. So that has been a dramatic change.
Mm-hmm.
Then I also lived through the different stages of insulin. I was put on to, I suppose you'd call it regular insulin, quick-acting insulin,
Mm-hmm.
long-acting insulin. I can't remember if it was once or twice a day. Now, in those days, to me, I had to be secretive. My mother brought me up that way. When friends asked me to go and sleep over, when I think of it, it was absolutely horrific. I left my insulin at home and I went to sleep over, and I couldn't wait to get home to go and take the insulin shot. One felt so awful.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, with glucose monitoring and insulin pumps, it's totally different.
And do you use a glucose monitor and an insulin pump now?
I'm too old, I believe, to use the insulin pump.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be changed and there are different aspects to it. But I certainly use the insulin monitoring. I use the dextrose G6,
Mm-hmm.
and that has made a big difference in life because one can judge with the dextrose 6 when the sugar goes up or goes down.
Mm-hmm.
And with the and also with the sensor, you can share your results. Now, my daughter, uh, who's an endocrinologist, has actually put me onto her phone, and I often get phone calls from her when she's at work to say your sugar is going down. And then also at night, uh, I feel bad. I've actually woken her a few times. At least the phone has woken her to announce that the sugar was dropping. So that is a tremendous advance in the diagnosis, treatment, and management. When I first got diabetes, there was no such thing as glucose monitoring. One
Mm-hmm.
passed one's urine 4 times a day, and there was I would call a little spirit lamp, which was a little flask filled with methylated spirits, and you had to light the wick and hold a test tube with Benedict solution,
Mm-hmm.
and after a time you saw if the sugar changed. If the color was blue, there was no sugar. Orange, it was quite high, and yellow, it was higher, and orange, it was high. And
Mm-hmm.
the doctors in those days didn't advise one to be sugar free. They kept on saying I should have a green label on a result, but I insisted on the blue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's been an advance. That was a spirit lamp in those days. Then they developed a strip that one could put in one's urine and check the color. Then they developed there was something else which I can't think of, and now the sensors, the
Mm-hmm.
dextrose sensors.
Mm-hmm.
So all these
Tell
have
them about
been
the size
really
of-
big advancements.
Yeah, tell her about the size of the
The
needle.
sensor, I don't know if you know anything about the talking about the dextrose G6. There is another make that makes the strips as well. You put the sensor strip onto the abdomen,
Mm-hmm.
and that has a little plug over it which you attach, which is called a transmitter. And so one doesn't feel it, or and it has a tiny needle which goes into the abdomen, uh, preferably the abdomen, they advise, and you don't feel it, but it senses it. If the sugar goes low, it beeps. And
Mm-hmm.
then you look and know, see, if the sugar goes high, it has a different beep. And I've often had to get up either to take sugar or eat something sweet, or if you hear the sound that the sugar is going up, to judge how high it is and whether I should take more insulin or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those continuous glucose monitors have really changed the type 1 management for sure over the years.
Tell her about the size of the needles.
Uh, and then also as far as the meals go, as I say, I was on a very, very strict diet, and I've been fortunate. I really think feeling sick when you have the sugar, that I have been very disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
And I have, until now, have watched the diet very strictly. And also with the glucose monitoring, the sensors, one can be aware of how much to eat and when and how much not to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And also if the monitor shows a sign that the sugar is going up, then one knows to stop eating, and also that whether one should take more insulin or not.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I've learned now that because if I'm going to have a big supper, I take 1 extra unit of insulin. If I have a small dose, a smallish supper, I know I must take a unit less.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And how do you think type 1 diabetes has shaped who you are in today?
How has it shaped me
Yep.
today?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Quite honestly, I don't even think about it because, as far as I feel, I've grown up with it. I've been normal. I've led a very normal life. I
Mm-hmm.
was fortunate. Uh, I passed schooling. I became a doctor, which I always wanted to be, even before I was diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
I had the education. I was head of a unit the Bartlesrand unit, campus health campus. I was head of the health service there.
Mm-hmm.
So I've shaped my life by being disciplined, or
Mm-hmm.
I've been very lucky. But being a diabetic at school, it was hard. I felt different.
Mm-hmm.
I was very complex. I didn't want my friends to know. Whether they knew or not, I don't know. But I was normal. I tried to be normal, and I was normal.
Yeah.
If we went mountain climbing, I held my breath, but I went. I was afraid to. Whereas nowadays, with the modern treatment, I wouldn't be afraid. I'd know I'd take with some food if I needed, and I'll take with the insulin. And with modern therapy for younger people, if they've got the insulin pump, then there's absolutely no hassle.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as type 1 diabetics go, if young people and even old people realize that they are no different to anyone else, that it's not a death sentence, as long as they take their insulin and have their food.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could go back and tell your younger self what to expect over your diabetes journey, what would you say?
I would say it's a bit of a hassle, but if you look after yourself, if you take I think the main thing is watch your diet
Mm-hmm.
and have your insulin. You are no different to anyone else. And also, I think the most important thing is that one succeeds in whatever one wants to do as long as you work at it.
Mm-hmm. Well, as a type 1 diabetic myself for 20 years, I love hearing your story and everything you've seen in technology and advancements. And if there is one thing that you wish everyone out there could know about type 1 diabetes, what would that be?
To be disciplined, to act normally, and not to have self pity, because one is as good as the next person.
Absolutely. Well, is there anything else you would like our watchers out there to know about it, about your life and your journey?
Sorry, just repeat that.
Anything else that you want to tell them?
Yep. Anything else you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I just want to mention that people sort of get afraid when they get diabetes. That's young and old.
Mm-hmm.
But one's just got to accept it and uh, act normally and be normally. For example, I was afraid to get married. I was afraid I was going to die. What was the point? And yet I got married. I told my husband, who needed 3 days to think of, he was a solemn type. He needed 3 days to think if he should go ahead and marry me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told I couldn't have children. I was fortunate I had two children, a boy and a girl. I was told that it was a miracle to have a son, for a diabetic to have a son. I was fortunate, I was a miracle, I had a son and a daughter. I have now met one or two type 1 diabetics who've had 4 children.
Mm-hmm.
In my day, it was absolutely not allowed. So there is really no difference as long as one is careful.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as one realizes, I'm going to say it in inverted commas, that one is not different to anyone else.
Absolutely.
And sorry, I was going to say, I think that is the main message, that a type 1 diabetic is as good as anyone else.
I have to agree with you. That is a great message for everyone to hear. And I really must thank you, Libby, for sharing your story with us. It's an inspiration to hear what you've seen and the advancements and the changes that have come with your life and throughout the last, 80 years. And thank you all out there for listening on this Hits Different chat. We hope that you found some inspiration and light in Libby's story like I just did. And please keep checking back at the American Diabetes Association social media pages for more stories and advancements all throughout the month of November. So thank you again, Libby, for telling us your story.
Now, it's a pleasure. Just one more thing that I remember.
Of course.
When I was high, well, it's actually funny, not then. When I was hypoglycemic and I had a geography exam, well, I had a geography anyway, but I failed the exam because I wrote a complete exercise book with the same, repeating the same line on the same thing on every line.
Mm-hmm.
So I got 0%, but fortunately they passed me on my year's work.
Well, that is a great story, and I'm so glad you shared that with us. Thank you so much for telling us your stories and your life, and we really appreciate it.
Now, thank you, and thank you for having me, and good luck for you. And you're at this stage of life, you'll live till 100 years.
I hope you're right. I hope so too.
I'm sure I will be.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.